Gentleman Henrico, Mr. Morrissey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking to House Bill 29.
Gentleman has the floor.
Fortunately, I guess Delegate Plum took some of the wind out of my sails when he talked about HB 29 not including money for Medicaid expansion. I'd like to expand on that just a little bit. You know, we have heard some wonderful arguments from both sides of the aisle dealing with Medicaid expansion. They're polar opposites, but they were good, well-reasoned arguments. And I heard every day for the past 4 or 5 weeks various articulate men and women delegates argue their respective positions. We heard the Majority Leader, Delegate Cox. We've heard Delegates Massey and Landis, who I believe served on Merck. We heard a speech yesterday from Delegate Garrett. They were well-reasoned. And not once did somebody on this side say, you know, you're right on that point. Similarly, we've had arguments from the Minority Leader, Delegate Toscano, Delegate Sickles, Delegate Krupika gave an argument the other day. Delegate Tyler gave a very impassioned argument on why we should have Medicaid expansion. Not one person on the other side said, you know, you're right on that point. I'd like to point out where we are in agreement. First of all, my colleagues on the other side are absolutely right. This is not a gotcha moment. You're absolutely right when you say that it's broken. You're right when you say that it's wasteful. You are absolutely right when you say Medicaid costs have expanded exponentially in the last 2 decades. It's unsustainable. You are correct. But won't you also agree that the gentlemen and gentle ladies on this side are correct when they say that there are 275,000 to 400,000 Virginians who are not insured? Would you not agree with the people on this side that say it is a net revenue loser? More money is going from Virginia to Washington than is coming back. And won't you agree that hospitals are going to be the major losers? Not just the large teaching hospitals in Charlottesville and Richmond, but rural hospitals, some of whom may close down. Won't you agree that if we don't have some type of expanded Medicaid coverage, irrespective of the name you put to it, that those are going to be losers? Now, I'd like to take a different approach, and I'm not so naive that I believe that after 5 weeks we're going to change other people's mindsets. I think there's a possibility that you may listen and say, you know, that's correct. Let's look at some of the things that we agree on. We all agree that prevention is one of the most important things that we can do. I want you to consider who was very successful in championing prevention. It was the Republicans during the Bush administration that pushed for expanded health clinics in rural jurisdictions. Why? So that those people could get health coverage. Good idea. Kudos to those Republicans that did that. But don't you understand that if we do this, if we expand Medicaid, we are simply giving people access in the form of a policy to that expanded coverage. Another thing we agree upon, my Republican friends in Congress were wildly successful. That might be a little bit too much of a praise, but they were very successful in moving from welfare to workfare. Don't you know, though, that those people that have successfully transitioned into workfare will be wiped out with one catastrophic illness or sickness? All the good will be undone. There's something else that's missing in all the arguments, I believe, from my friends on the other side. And that was highlighted by Delegate Garrett's, again, well-argued comments, well-debated comments yesterday. He talked about, when he came to the General Assembly 4 years ago, he went to Delegate Putney, and he said, what do I have to do to be successful? I've got to learn, I've got to listen, I've got to then be an advocate. I think what was missing was the C word, compromise. Now, there is actually a compromise that's been championed on the other side of the aisle, the other side of the hall. Senators Stosh, Senator Watkins have a compromise in the form of what they've labeled Marketplace Virginia. Now, those two gentlemen, Republicans, have actually served a little bit longer than Delegate Garrett in the House, 26 years. They've served 63 years altogether. Maybe those Republicans who have compromised with those Democrats in the Senate, maybe they're right. Is it possible that they're right? And if you listen to what they've said, it makes sense. I tell you what doesn't make sense. As well argued and intentioned Delegate Landis was when he's spoken out against Medicaid expansion, I respectfully submit that he was wrong when he said from the very beginning, no way, no time, never, ever, ever will I agree to Medicaid expansion. And he said that from the very beginning. Not the most prudent way to get people to agree with you on your side. Now, when Delegate Garrett talked about Medicaid expansion and ruling it out, he said something interesting. And he said it from a perspective of a legislator and a physician, that there's no nexus from expanding health care coverage and getting better health care results. No empirical evidence. And I think I'm paraphrasing him. Well, I was reminded of, remember I told you I'm an article clipper. From July 8th, 2013, this summer, Professor Moser from VCU said the following. Opponents of Medicaid expansion point to a study that suggests Medicaid coverage does not translate into measurable improvements in health outcomes. But that is like saying that people who are the poorest and the most vulnerable to health-related problems are better off without access to medical treatment. As a matter of logic, he said, that doesn't make sense. And it doesn't. That's like saying to all of us who have wonderful insurance policies, there's no empirical evidence, no nexus between your coverage and your better health, therefore, don't have coverage. It simply doesn't make any sense. And while I'm on the subject of those legislators that are contemplating a bill that doesn't have Medicaid expansion, I would be remiss if I didn't say this. How can we, 100 delegates who have the Cadillac of insurance policies, there is no better insurance policy in the state. It is the envy of every Virginian. We are part-time legislators with a full-time gold standard policy, allowing us unlimited, almost unlimited home health care after surgery, unlimited extensive reconstructive surgery, from expanded autism spectrum disorder coverage to lap band surgery. We got it. And we would have the audacity and the temerity to tell those 400,000 Virginians that don't have it, we'll take advantage of our policy, but you'll get nothing. It is not disgraceful, it's not disingenuous, it's unchristian. Now, thank you. Let me end by saying this. I'm a little bit confused right now because I've heard about the Virginia Way and the Virginia Plan. I think we've gotten our names morphed up. I thought that Virginia Plan was what Madison did in 1787 with the 55 delegates in Philadelphia. But whatever name we put to it, Virginia Plan, Marketplace Virginia, we are doing a disservice to those poor people, those uninsured that don't have the same access to health care that we have.
Mr. Speaker, point of order.
Gentleman stated.
Mr. Speaker, given that House Bill 29 has zero reference to Medicaid expansion and there is no amendment that has been proposed to that matter that speaks to that measure, would the gentleman's remarks at this juncture be appropriate?
I think he's about done.
And I am. And my point, Mr. Speaker, is we are about to vote on House Bill 29. this budget that does not have one of the most crucial aspects that is needed, Medicaid expansion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.